And we're live. It's going to be a big week, ladies and gentlemen. A lot going on. We've learned from DHS that attacker in Colorado was actually here in the country illegally. We're going to talk a lot about that as the Trump administration tries to crack down on this and get as many as 3,000 illegals out of the country every single day. Meanwhile, I've told you before, I'm telling you again, Letitia James is absolutely finished. And you know what? She should be. The indictment could be happening as soon as this week, certainly coming very, very soon. We're going to talk all about that. Meanwhile, oh my goodness, we got a lot to get into with this whole Biden Autopen Scandal. And I'm telling you, MSNBC is cooked. Internal rumblings now in media circles about whether or not they decide to get rid of MSNBC altogether and move forward with this Versant spinoff. That's what SpinCo is going to be called. They had to, use a good French name to kind of make the place seem a little spiffier. They also got rid of Joy Reid in the process. But do they get rid of all MSNBC altogether? That's one of the big questions. We are live. Welcome, everyone, to the program. It is wonderful to have you here. I am Trish Regan. This is the Trish Regan Show, and we're really happy because we just got named in YouTube's Top 100 podcast. We're up over 28,000 subs and climbing right now. That's all thanks to you guys. Again, we're live. I see all the comments, every single one of them. So bring them on, all right? Bring them on. Letitia James, we keep talking about this, and we're going to keep talking about this because this woman is going to be out as Attorney General of the state of New York, and she's going to be out for a variety of reasons, as she should. But most pressing on her docket at this moment in time this week is that indictment is imminent for one Letitia James. The Eastern Virginia court is coming forward. They've subpoenaed everyone, the grand jury, and that indictment, as I said, is expected any day now. So she's going to be heading off to court to try and defend herself and prevent herself from going to the slammer for 30 years? That's the penalty. Basically for being in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements to obtain a federally insured loan, or 18 U.S.C. 1001, false statements to the government. So the subpoenas have gone out. The subpoenas are issued. She's got to fight this thing. She's fighting it by just saying it's political. Well, I don't know, Letitia. I mean, you are a lawyer, right? So on the power of attorney, why would you be saying that Virginia was your permanent residence? And we could say, okay, one time, little mistake. Not that she should have had that mistake, but it's multiple times. And so now you've got New York State looking into this, launching an investigation into what she was doing with her brownstone that she claimed was 4 units instead of 5 units because it got her, once again, a special deal. As she said, these are her words, okay? These are her words, not mine. This is what makes this whole thing so darn poetic, everyone. When powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of honest and hardworking people. Everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank to get a mortgage to buy a home, and if they did, our government would throw the book at them. There simply cannot be different rules for different people. Oh, you're right. You're right, Tish. Now Donald Trump is finally facing accountability for his lying, cheating, and staggering fraud. Because no matter how big, rich, and powerful you think you are, no one is above the law. So these are really coming back to haunt her in a rather big way, don't you think? As the indictment looms, as she's going to get her tushy hauled into federal court, facing the possibility of 30 years. Meanwhile, what do you have? Voters getting pretty furious that she's trying to use taxpayer funds, $10 million of a slush fund that Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, and other Democrats in New York have set aside for Letitia. The GOP in New York's like, no, we're not having this. Meanwhile, you got the FHA director coming out, outlining the whole thing. Let's take another look at William Pulte, who put forward the letter to the DOJ in the first place and says, we've got a case. We know mortgage fraud when we see it. And I love how he refers to Tishy Baby as the subject. Listen.
Recommended that the DOJ investigate New York Attorney General Letitia James over alleged mortgage fraud. The AG, Letitia James, has responded. We don't have the video, but here's the quote. "This investigation into me is nothing more than retribution. It's baseless. It has to do with the fact that on a power of attorney, I mistakenly indicated that I was a state of Virginia resident. And prior to that, I indicated to the mortgage broker that, in fact, in bold cap letters, that I am not a resident of Virginia and never will be. They just took the power of attorney and they're using that as a basis for enforcement of their investigation." Bill, do you know why she said she was a resident of Virginia on the power of attorney, if in fact she wasn't?
Well, I know that we are mortgage experts, and we only refer things that we think are mortgage fraud, and we stand 100% behind the letter. I'll let the letter speak for itself. I do know, and I have seen some reports from that subject, from that subject's criminal defense lawyer, saying certain things. I'll leave it to the DOJ to correct various things. But again, when we see mortgage fraud, we are going to report it. When we see mortgage fraud, we are going to prosecute it within the confines of our duties. And we are not going to be intimidated by a subject's criminal defense lawyer. We are not going to be intimidated by a politician or just because you have an Esquire behind your name. We are not going to be intimidated by people. If we see mortgage fraud, we're going to do something about it. And I think that you're going to see us be taking this on in a big way. Mortgage fraud is a big problem. These companies are safe and sound, but where we see it, we are going to do something about it. And that subject's case is no different.
Well, what are the ramifications of this now that you've referred this for criminality to the DOJ?
Well, I would refer that to the DOJ. Again, as I say, we spend our days, we are mortgage experts. We are not politicians. I view this as an economic job. Obviously, the president can fire me at any time. So I guess in that way. But look, I look at this as an independent agency. We found the mortgage fraud, whether it be that particular subject or other subjects, and we work actively with the DOJ and different law enforcement.
Yes, they do. They work actively with the DOJ, the FBI, who has announced as well its investigation, the DOJ, who's announced its investigation, of course, the grand jury there in Eastern Virginia. But let me share with you a little bit from that letter. Pulte writes about 604 Sterling Street, Norfolk, Virginia, on August 17th, 2023. I mean, this is like during the height of the whole thing with Trump, right? Where she's accusing him of mortgage fraud. Ms. James granted Ms. Shamise Thompson Hairston power of attorney to make a Virginia property her principal residence. And on August 30th and 31st, through her attorney, Ms. James purchased this property in Norfolk, Virginia, in a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3047, and in mortgage documents, she reaffirmed this would be her primary residence, despite being a public officer in the state of New York at that same time, and presumably, right, primarily residing in the state of New York. So let's go back to Tishy baby saying, okay, nobody is above the law, nobody at all. When powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of honest and hardworking people. You see, Tish, in this case, you were trying to use taxpayer funds to get that better mortgage. Because you see, when you have a primary residence, you get a totally different mortgage rate than when it's a secondary residence. Why? Oh, because the banks say, gee, there's a really good shot that somebody might be more likely to default on a loan for a secondary vacation home than they would in a primary home. So therefore, you do get a better financial picture. So this is what she is allegedly trying to take advantage of, despite at the very same time going after Donald Trump, trying to say he's trying to get a better mortgage rate because, he's inflating the value of his home. That's between him and his bank, by the way. This was a private transaction. This was not a federal transaction where you're hitting up Freddie and Fannie. And thus us U.S. taxpayers, okay? Tishy baby, that's the difference. That's why you never should have brought your case to court in the first place, something that the judges cited over and over and again. I mean, as soon as the appellate lawyer who's arguing the case came before the judge, what did they say? There's no victim. This is a commercial dispute. What are you doing here in our darn court? Not to mention, why the heck do you have a $500 million with a B dollar fine leveled against the now president of the United States?
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where, and where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transaction or losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Well, several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Boom, okay? And that's why the case never should have been brought. But remember her, too male, too pale, too stale, all the, I'm going to get Trump, I'm going to get Trump, I'm going to get Trump. I mean, she campaigned on it. She raised money off of it. This was the whole thing, even though she says that wasn't the case. Hey, there's this little thing called videotape, Ms. Letitia James, and we got it. I'm not going to bore you guys with it because we've played it a lot of times on this show, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. She campaigned on it. So, 1, she should be out just because of that. 2, this case has got to be thrown out. The appellate court case, that is, with the $500 million fine, my gosh. And 3, she's facing court herself with the indictment coming because of her own alleged fraud and abuse. I mean, the judge said it here again. This is a private transaction. What are you doing bugging us with this?
It was using...
I'm sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
Well, to go back to the first question about whether there's other examples of this, there are other examples of this. In the First American case, the Attorney General brought a 6312 case where the transaction at issue was between a very big bank, Wells Fargo, and a professional appraisal firm.
But it wasn't the concern there that the public would ultimately be negatively impacted and affected by what those corporate actors were doing.
And that concern is here as well, because when you have hidden risks getting injected into the market, that hurts the market and honest participants in the market. And the legislature also decided, contrary to what defendants think, that making sure that business in New York stays honest is the way to attract and keep business in New York.
To that point, the executive law...
I'm sorry. Again, commercial transaction, no victim. So you can try and spin this however you want. Let's go back to the fact that there's no victim. Let's go back to the fact that Deutsche Bank is free to make whatever kind of deals it would like to make. And Deutsche Bank is on the hook for making sure the square footage is what Donald Trump says it is. Deutsche Bank is on the hook for making sure that the valuation he places on the property, which is a heck of a lot more, obviously, than Letitia's $18 million. I'm telling you guys, we got to put a fund together, right? And say, hey, Letitia, we'll buy it for that amount of money. Unbelievable. So she's deciding, suddenly, the Attorney General of New York, what something is worth. I don't think so. No, Deutsche Bank is going to make that decision and decide whether or not they're going to take on the risk. The reason why the case with Letitia James is so entirely different is in that situation, you have public funds that are being used, public money. These mortgages are being secured by the likes of Fannie and Freddie, not by Deutsche Bank. So therefore, you're actually commingling, right? Public funds, our taxpayer dollars, thereby putting us all at risk when you do something like this. Fill out an application saying that it's your principal residence. Again, going back to Pulte's allegations against her, this is, in their estimation, absolute positive mortgage fraud. On top of that, right? You've got the fact that she's got that brownstone in New York. They're looking into this one in New York where she's saying it's 4 units instead of 5 units because then she gets extra favorable terms and special federal money, housing money for that. I mean, this is a woman who believes in living off the system. Let's be honest. What is she? She is someone who's going to live off of taxpayers. That's why she wants taxpayers to foot the bill for her massive legal expedition here. She's going to court and she expects you to pay for it. Well, you, if you live in the state of New York, I'm telling you, she's running out of cash. She's got this Abby Lowell who represented Hunter Biden and he costs a pretty penny. So what is she going to do? She's going to use that $10 million slush fund they have for her in New York that the Democrats put aside. Only thing is the media's caught on to this, right? The New York Post has reported on this. I have reported on this. And I don't think taxpayers are going to love this. Even the liberal New York Magazine is saying that this is kind of questionable. James has again, they write, displayed dubious ethical instincts in her response to the pending inquiry. She has inexplicably chosen to use the resources of her public office to respond to the investigation. James issued a statement through the AG's official spokesperson, and she reportedly plans to use state funds to cover some of her legal expenses. I mean, I think you can sue her just for that, can you not? I mean, you can't be using taxpayer dollars to cover your personal legal challenges. It's not New York's fault or the taxpayers' fault that you decided to lie on your documents and now you're cut. I mean, you know what they say about throwing stones at glass houses? Tishy baby. I'm looking at one of your comments and you guys are saying she wanted to take over Trump Tower. You better believe it. I've played the soundbite before, but I'm going to play it again because it's so good. Again, poetry at work. This is operatic in its nature, given what's going down right now. She may lose that house in Virginia. She may lose that brownstone in New York, and she will lose her position as Attorney General of the state of New York, possibly, as she should, her law license, and I expect there may be some prison time. Here she is, bragging about how she's going to get Trump.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
Boom, ba-dum. Okay, I think they're going to be seizing yours. Your assets. I mean, poetry. I like seeing justice. I just got to say, and I think it's fascinating that of all the things they could have gotten her on, they're getting her on mortgage fraud, alleged. Right? You got to admit, it's rather remarkable. I mean, whoever did the digging and found this, and I think Roger Stone had a hand in it, brilliant. Okay, just brilliant. Because she's looking at 30 years in the slammer. I shouldn't laugh. It's terrible what she did. It's absolutely terrible. It was mind-boggling. And so you know what? She deserves whatever Tishy baby is going to get. I'm telling you. Oh, we got news out of the Intel department today. Deep State going bye-bye, bye-bye. New Intel ops being purged as we speak. I told you Trump was going to clean house. Indeed, we saw that he fired about 100 NSC staffers right before Memorial Day. It was like Friday, late on Friday, and they said you get 30 minutes to clean out your desk. There's 100 of these people from the National Security Council. Well, this is accelerating now because it's not just the NSC. You've got, I believe this is one of the Foreign Affairs Journal writing on this, is the NSC dead? But you've also now got something called, I had never really heard of this, the CISA group, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Well, the heads, 3 of the top 6 people in that division, they're saying bye-bye. They're leaving. They're winding down their positions this month. This is all courtesy of Donald Trump, who's trying to make some massive changes. So they had 6 people there. They're now down to 3. This comes on the heels of him getting rid of the head of the NSA. Remember that? And I suspect that a big part of the motivation here is you had too many people that were within the system that were sort of career government bureaucrats that were not in line with his thinking. The other reality of what's going on, and I'll just point out what CISA is. It's had a long time task of defending U.S. government systems, elections, and critical infrastructure from foreign hackers. It also has been a target of Trump, who went after Chris Krebs, remember, back in 2020 over the elections. So there's been some bad blood there, and I think fundamentally he just doesn't like these people, right? He does not like these people because he sees them at being at odds with him. The other thing I'll just tell you about him, and I know this from him, it's been my personal experience with him, he'll call you up and say like, he wants a perspective or intel on something, or maybe wants to talk to somebody. I remember once talking with him about something that was going on in Latin America. And he doesn't speak Spanish, and I do. And I was like, well, you're going to have to involve your team. Like, you're going to have to bring them in. He's like, I'm like, but you don't speak Spanish. So, But it struck me as sort of kind of cool and amazing that you have a president who wants a direct line of communication, right? Like, he wants to talk to all the people that are on the ground actually living, breathing a situation, as opposed to all the people within the NSA, within the cybersecurity team, within the State Department, and within the NSC. And so he, I think, bottom line, trusts his own instincts and the sort of word of what he's hearing. He wants to hear a lot of different opinions, by the way, don't get me wrong. Like, he's all about hearing many different sides, but he wants to make the decision himself. And so when NSC comes in and they've got the briefing, right, and they're like, here's the deal. Here's how you have to think about North Korea. Here's how you have to think about Russia. Here's how you have to think about China. Here's how you have to think about Venezuela. He's like, Let me think about how I want to think about these places, okay? And then we'll talk. But instead, there's a deep state system within our government that has policies, right? And those policies stay and they rarely shift. And he's coming and saying, no, I'm the CEO here. I want to make the decisions. I want to shift policies and I'm going to do it. And so he has all these people and the system that's in the way. And you think about the system, James Comey, that not only was in the way, but then could do some serious damage to him. And I think he's like, I'm not taking it this time. I'm just not going to do it. So this is what's going down. There's a total purge of these deep state people. And it's happening at a good time because I think that a lot of things are shifting and changing. And I don't know that every president in the future is going to have, shall we say, Donald Trump's capabilities or instincts, et cetera. So there may be a point in time when you say, okay, we need more intelligence ops in the background because, the president's kind of just like a little puppet. I mean, it shouldn't be that way. But let's face it, what do you think Joe Biden was, right? And then you had Joe Biden's NSC team going on, bragging. Jake Sullivan so proud of the fact that they had cleaned up the Middle East. And then what happened days later? October 7th, sadly.
And what we said is we want to depressurize, de-escalate, and ultimately integrate the Middle East region. The war in Yemen is in its 19-month of truce. For now, the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces have stopped. Our presence in Iraq is stable. I emphasize for now because all of that can change. And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Oops. Tragically, we know what happened right after that. So, you can't be naive about these things. I don't think Donald Trump is naive. I think he's very much a realist. And he looks around at this team with all their research and all their briefings. And he's like, hang on, let me get to the bottom of this. And so consequently, yeah, you're seeing a lot of shift, a big shift that's going down as we speak with all of these career bureaucrats kind of being told, see ya. And so they're upset about it. And the more this happens, the more upset they're going to be, right? I mean, that's just the reality of all that's happening. There's other things happening right now, too. I mean, you think about Susan Rice and her frustration for Trump not reading his briefings every single day. She said this. I'm trying to see if I can find you this, guys, because it was rather interesting to hear Susan Rice's big attack on the president. And I'm like, here's what you guys don't get. Here's what you don't get. People like the fact that he's not depending on deep state for all of his information and all his briefings. We'll find it later. But anyway, Susan Rice has come out and said that, he shouldn't do that. He shouldn't do that. Well, guess what? He's going to do that. And given what we're learning about who has come into the country, including what just went down in Colorado, tragically, we're learning there's a lot of people that are not necessarily on Team USA, okay, that are here and going to do us harm. And this is why you have people like Stephen Miller so furious that we need to get some of these individuals out. 3,000 a day the Trump administration is shooting for right now, with that number expected to grow and to grow. Because, hey, I mean, you got to protect yourself first. We get news from DHS today that the Colorado attacker is a terrorist that was illegally in the United States of America. Illegally in the United States of America. We go to CNN.
All right, breaking this morning, new details on what the FBI is calling a targeted terrorist attack in Boulder, Colorado. At least 8 people injured in the attack on a peaceful march in support of the Israeli hostages held in Gaza. Smoke rising from the scene where the FBI says a man used a makeshift flamethrower and threw an incendiary device into the crowd. Witnesses describe bystanders using water to douse the burn victims. Seen on video carrying 2 bottles. Police say he shouted, "Free Palestine."
Right? I mean, can you get why this administration is saying we need to actually figure out and vet who is here? You understand why this administration is saying to all these fancy universities like Harvard, hey, we need some intel. We need a list of all the people that are here and whether they've engaged in any of these Free Palestine things and whether or not they're trying to stir up you know what. Here is information that the DHS has. CNN so reluctantly reports on this particular individual causing such tragedy in Colorado. Let's listen.
He, according to the Department of Homeland Security, this is from the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, Tricia McLaughlin, he entered the country in August 2022 on a B-2 visa that expired in February 2023. He filed for asylum in September of 2022. Sources are telling CNN's John Miller that he had previously applied for asylum in 2005. We know that the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, had previously tweeted that he had overstayed a visa and was in the country illegally.
Excuse me? So he overstayed a visa and is in the country illegally. Why are we allowing this? Okay? Like, why? It is so unbelievably bad. And the deep state apparatus, and this is why Donald Trump is so passionate about fighting the NSC bureaucrats that actually were all for the open border thing. What's going on? Like, how is anyone okay with somebody who is a threat to our country being here illegally? I'd like to know. You want to tell me, CNN? Stephen Miller shutting them down.
Do you think a judge should just rubber stamp what your White House does? If not, what checks and balances do you think should be in place for this White House?
It is not the job of a district court judge to perform an individual green light or red light on every single policy that the president takes as the head of the executive branch. Just think about the premise baked into your question, respectfully, Pam. You're saying that when the American people elect a president of the United States of America,
I'm not saying
well, it's the implication, who is the sole head of the executive branch. Well, let me finish. I will answer the question happily. But look, when you have these kinds of lazy assumptions built into questions, it makes it hard to have a constructive dialogue.
What is a lazy assumption? I said you all had to win.
You said is it my expectation?
I'm speaking
you
because
said,
now you're putting...
You said, is it my expectation? It's not just you. It's the whole media. In other words, when you
I know
hear
you
a
want
sentence
to
like...
It is a completely fair question. You say judges who rule against the White House
and I will
go rogue.
gladly answer it. When you say, do we think district court judges should rubber stamp each action? There is a premise that is built into that is absurd. The president is the sole head of the executive branch. He's the only officer in the entire government that's elected by the entire American people. Democracy cannot function. In fact, democracy does not exist at all if each action the president takes, foreign policy, diplomatic, military, national security, has to be individually approved by 700 district court judges. That's democracy. So if there's 15 communist crazy judges on the court, that each of them as a team working together can block and freeze each and every executive action?
Yeah, I don't know how that really actually works, right? Because then the president is losing all federal power. You can't have this disjointed system. And he's totally right on that. I want to go to Peace of My Mind's comment, who's asking, has anybody explained this yet? Why the open borders? Why allow expired visas to stay? I think the problem is, Peace of My Mind, it's not that they're necessarily allowing, it's that they've kind of just infiltrated the system and they're hiding. And then you got to go out and find them. And so it's a big undertaking. And this is exactly what the administration is trying to do. And then they're getting fought at every turn with all of these sanctuary cities and all these sanctuary counties and all these sanctuary states. And that's why they've come out and labeled 30 cities in the United States of America as sanctuary, and they're stripping them of federal funds. Because it's like, the reckless kid that's unfortunately ruining his or her own life, right? Do you keep feeding them money and say, go for it? No, you cut them off. And that's what Donald Trump is doing to these 30 sanctuary cities and states. He's cutting them off. You're out of money. You're not going to get anything because you're not complying with federal law. And I don't care what anybody says. Federal law trumps, pun intended, state law every single day on this one. You go to the Supremacy Clause, you go to the Commerce Clause, you go to the Naturalization Clause. It is very clear. It's all over the Constitution of the United States. So don't tell me for 2 seconds that somebody can say, no, you can be here. We're sanctuary. We're this, we're that. No, not happening. And this is another thing. I hate to keep going back to Miller, but gosh darn, he's good, right? He just eviscerated this CNN reporter the other day on all of these things. It came up again as we learned that, a migrant had been sent a migrant is being targeted allegedly by the feds because the migrant allegedly sent a letter threatening Donald Trump's life. I mean, again, this comes as we're learning that somebody who's here illegally did something really bad in Colorado. So can you blame the administration from saying or for saying we want to actually make changes here? Here's Miller. Basically, you had me at illegal. If you're going to come here and you're going to disturb the nation, or you're just going to come here illegally, that puts you in a pretty bad bracket. And you shouldn't expect, frankly, the same kind of treatment as anyone else. If you're here illegally, period.
Do you think a judge should just rubber stamp what your White House does? If not, what checks and balances do you think should be in place for this White House?
It is not the job of a district court judge to perform an individual green light or red light on every single policy that the president takes as the head of the executive branch. Just think about the premise baked into your question, respectfully, Pam. You're saying that when the American people elect a president of the United States of America,
I'm not saying
well, it's the implication, who is the sole head of the executive branch. Well, let me finish. I will answer the question happily. But look, when you have these kinds of lazy assumptions built into questions, it makes it hard to have a constructive dialogue.
What is a lazy assumption? I said you all had to win.
You said is it my expectation?
I'm speaking because now you're putting.
You said is it my expectation? It's not just you. It's the whole media. In other words, when you hear a sentence like,
it is a completely fair question. You say judges who rule against the White House.
And I will gladly answer it. When you say, do we think district court judges should rubber stamp each action? There is a premise that is built into that is absurd. The president is the sole.
Okay, and we heard that. So again, I just think he's doing a really good job laying it out and explaining it. Jeff Monhay, thank you for the generosity. Let's go again back to Miller. The part I wanted to show you was where he's sort of like, you had me at illegal. And in light of what's going on in Colorado, I think that this is relevant.
Undocumented migrant sent a letter threatening to kill the president, promising to self-deport after the assassination. CNN reporting shows that investigators believe the migrant was set up. It was a victim of a setup. What is the administration going to do now? And this is an undocumented immigrant. I do want to note that. But this was someone who came forward, was a victim of a crime, and now law enforcement believes he was set up. Go ahead.
Well, I want to clarify what you mean, so we're talking about the same thing. Are you saying this immigrant was here illegally?
Yes, but I am, and that's why I said that. I clarified that.
You said undocumented, and I wasn't clear what that means. I'm assuming they have a fake ID. I'm assuming they have a fake social security number.
That's neither here nor there. That's getting away from the question, Stephen. I want this to be, and call me naive, a good faith discussion about what's happening right now.
But when we use language that's designed to obscure the truth, that's not good faith.
An illegal
alien is an illegal alien. They're not an undocumented migrant.
Okay, that's fine. That's another discussion for another date.
I don't know the details of the assassination threat. All I can say, based on what you're telling me, is there's an illegal alien in our country who's making menacing threats. Regardless of the facts or circumstances, we don't want him here. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and I would gladly come back on when I have more information to share with you.
They were set up, just to be clear. But quickly, where is the White House on habeas corpus?
Was treated unfairly. Yes, I'm sure the illegal alien was treated very unfairly.
Yeah, because he's saying, I'm sure he was treated unfairly, right? You're always going to say that. Again, it brings us back to center, right? So as Donald Trump purges people within the deep state, a lot of people within the deep state, and tries to rewrite the rules here on these open borders and is faced with these 700 district court judges who may think one way or another, he's running up against certain challenges. One good bit of news we got last week on Thursday, the Supreme Court did say the 535,000 estimated non-citizens who had come here under Biden's special parole program from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, they are now blocked. They have to leave the country. So now, of course, they're going to have to go out and find all 532,000 of them because they just disseminated into this country. Part of the reason for this, guys, and I hate to say it, but this is just the reality of the Democrats nowadays, is that they were looking at what's called gerrymandering, right? Redistricting, where they wanted to make sure they had a certain influx of people coming into states that they were trying to reposition as blue states. Oh, they want Texas. Oh, they want Florida. Oh, I mean, they got California. We'll see. Maybe that'll eventually shift because I think people in California are like, oh, whoa, we didn't sign up for this. High taxes, high crime. Lots of problems. I mean, it's a mess in California. So, great example, right? Great case study of what you don't want to become. My point being that Biden was, for whatever reason, and it may not have been Biden, right? I mean, I think that's what we're learning, may not have been Biden at all, but they were trying very hard to bring in a lot of people here into this country that would need to live off the system and then could therefore help them redistrict because, oh, we have this many more people in this particular area in Florida. So boom, oh, we're going to get another congressperson there. That's how we're going to win. You call that winning? These people don't play fair. I mean, they don't play fair. So I think it's a huge win. The Supreme Court said, you know what, you can end that parole program. A huge, 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 huge deal. And I'm telling you, more is coming because as 3,000 people are being sent home every day, lots more is going to happen. Meanwhile, you look at what went just down in Colorado and you got to ask yourself, what's the deal with all the visas, the student visas that were given out left and right? Harvard coming under the microscope for that, losing federal funding. They're suing, of course. And then, of course, the administration is like, all those students you have here, we want information on them. And by the way, they deserve to have the information on them. DHS deserves that, especially in light of what we've learned in Colorado.
The president's authority to prevent foreign nationals from entering the country is one of his greatest and highest authorities. He is operating at the apex of executive power when he does so. Congress, likewise, has codified and cemented that authority by giving the Department of Homeland Security and the Secretary of State plenary authority to reject the entry of foreign nationals into this country, which is what makes that Harvard ruling from this crazy judge so obscene. Harvard defied multiple DHS subpoenas for information about its foreign students and about law-breaking and national security threats on campus. Harvard has engaged in decades of invidious, unlawful, and illegal race-based discrimination against American citizens. So Harvard is engaged in illegal and criminal conduct, and a judge is siding with Harvard's right to pad his pockets with foreign cash over the rights of American citizens and the American Constitution. The Democrat Party's philosophy right now is for foreigners, everything, for Americans, nothing. President Trump is fighting for American workers, for the blue-collar workers, and for the middle class of this country.
Boom. About time, right? Okay, so lots of changes coming. And I think a lot of people just don't like this. They're really threatened by it. It's really scary. By the way, little moment to brag. We've been named to the top 100 in the YouTube podcast list. I hope we stay on the top 100. That's why I'm looking in the chat. Don's like and subscribe and share and comment and all that good stuff because it's a big deal. The algorithm likes it. When you guys like it, the algorithm likes it, and then they put us in the top 100, and then, you know, what do you know? We get more viewers. So it's this circle of giving all around. Thank you for all you guys do. Biden, serious, obvious mental decline. He spoke out about this recently, and so did one Bill Clinton. Okay, Bill Clinton, it's like a CYA move. You got Bill Clinton worried about his hide. You got Jen Psaki, the former press person. Remember little Peppermint Patty over there that was in the gig before KJP? She at least had the good sense to get out. She's coming out saying, oh, I didn't see anything. Nobody saw anything. Come on, people. I mean, we all saw it. But Biden, however, says, you know what? He would do it again and again and again because he could beat them all. Just like that.
I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
Right? He is a mess. I've showed you that bite before. It's really kind of unforgivable, all that went down. But like I said, he'd do it again because he could beat them all.
And there's also been a lot of discussion recently about your mental and physical capabilities while you were in office.
You can see that. I'm mentally incompetent and I can't walk and I can beat the hell out of both of them.
Do you want to reply to any of those reports and also to the fact that there are some Democrats who are now questioning whether you should have run for re-election in the first place?
Why didn't they run against me then? Because I'd have beaten them.
Do you have any regrets?
No, I don't.
No. He says he's in tip-top shape. Yeah, right. That's what we saw over and over again. That's what we saw with the invisible chair. Tip-top shape. There was a chair. In fairness, there was a chair, but he really wanted to sit in it a little too fast there. Remember that one? And, you know, Jill's like, no, not yet, honey, not yet. Anyway, Bill Clinton has decided to weigh in on this, ladies and gentlemen. And let me go to what he's saying, because this is just unbelievable. John, thank you for the generosity. We've got a few of these super chats in the crowd here today. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to get to your comments.
There's this book that came out that talks about Joe Biden and the people around him seeing that he had cognitive and physical decline. Did you ever have a moment with him where you thought maybe he was unfit to run for president? No.
I thought he was a good president. The only concern I thought he had to deal with was, could anybody do that job until they were 86? And we'd had several long talks. I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline?
So I didn't know anything about any of this, and I haven't read the book. I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought he was in good shape. But the book didn't register with me because I never saw him that way.
Why didn't you read the book?
I didn't want to, because he's not president anymore, and I think he did a good job, and I think we are facing challenges today without precedent in our history. And some people are trying to use this as a way to blame him for the fact that Trump was reelected.
Yeah. Well, I think he's a big part of the reason why Trump was reelected. I mean, again, poetry at work, ladies and gentlemen. And poetry that Letitia James is getting hit with the exact charge she tried to go after Donald Trump for in a very strange way, right? You know how I feel about that case. And then simultaneously, it comes out that Joe Biden is being covered up for by all of these Dems. And now suddenly people are realizing, gosh, maybe that wasn't the brightest thing to do. Maybe that was all about holding on to our own darn power, because actually the best way to hold on to power is to not have a puppet president, but to put up a candidate that the American people believe in and want to get behind. But you wouldn't do it. You couldn't do it. John Luna, thank you so much. I'm glad that you're enjoying this stream. And AJ as well, thank you for the generosity, guys. Much appreciated. Make sure you guys subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff right here on the Trish Regan channel. But I gotta tell you, there was a whole lot of cover-up going on. And they don't know what to say about it all now, because it was totally obvious. Anyone had two eyes and a brain. I mean, all you had to do was listen to him. All you had to do was look at him, and you knew. Right? So now Bill Clinton's like, I didn't see that. I didn't see that. Gosh, he sounds just like Little Peppermint Patty. Jen Psaki, trying to profess her innocence as only she can.
I left in May of 2022, just for the facts here. And I have seen Biden once since then, when I took my daughter to the holiday party this last December after he had lost. And so I hadn't seen him in person during that period of time. I never saw that person, not a single time. And I was in the Oval Office every day that was on that debate stage. I'm not a doctor. Aging happens quite quickly. Were things that people saw during that period of time that were similar to that, or would have been in a category of that? I don't know, possibly, right? And all these books are going to tell us.
Do you think that were they actively covering it up? Were they sort of in denial, or was that just a bad debate? Like, what is your read on that?
Well, this is what I mean about cover up is a very loaded term, I think.
Well, it means you knew that it was really bad and you're pretending otherwise, versus you're deluding yourself, which I think is what people do a lot.
Well, I understand, but I still think it's like cover up is often like a crime, right? We're talking, when people use that term.
They say it's worse than the crime.
People use that term as they relate to Watergate, or the covering up of not sharing public information about a war.
Yeah, and I'm not accusing anybody of a crime.
I understand, but other people have used that term, and I think it's a bit of a dangerous term.
By the way, including guys, the author of the book. I'm not a fan of Jake Tapper. I think he's phony. He saw exactly what we saw. There's no excuse for anybody trying to say that, this guy was in tip-top shape and it was a bunch of cheap fakes that were daring to show the invisible chair moment. There was a chair, okay? But we all saw the same thing. We all saw how incoherent he was, how slow he was, how he couldn't...
I better not start the questions, I'll get in trouble.
How he couldn't take questions because he'd get in trouble. Who is he going to be in trouble with?
Do you have a message for voters? Thanks, come on.
We all saw that together, and yet they want to cover it up. Clinton's covering it up. Psaki's covering it up. Jake Tapper, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. And now he comes out trying to make a buck on the whole thing. Well, I'll tell you this is going down as the biggest scandal in modern political history, because Joe Biden may not have known anything that he was doing. He didn't know that he was opening up the border so he could have 532,000 people come here and be non-citizens. Somebody else that was targeting Florida redistricting, targeting Texas redistricting. They were busy doing this, which means the Autopen's going to be in big trouble, and we've got an investigation.
That I haven't said before because it came from a Secret Service whistleblower this past year. I talked to so many of them after the attempted assassinations of President Trump. But this Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet. The president of the United States. I mean, this is outrageous. We were lied to. And Sean, you know as well as I do, the press has a huge role in this. I mean, the press actually is really important in America. They're supposed to report the truth. It's what you do every night. It's not what
but they couldn't for whatever reason seem to get out of their own way. They weren't reporting the truth because there was this groupthink and perhaps even an administration that wouldn't allow them. I mean, I've never seen state media like we saw state media in action for Joe Biden. And his biggest regret was that he didn't do more of it. He told Susan Page at USA Today in his exit interview when she said, "Do you have any regrets?" He said, "Yeah, I wish I could have controlled the misinformation more." And I'm like, whoa. Really? I mean, you don't think you did enough during the campaign? You and Antony Blinken coming up with the big idea to put 51X spooks out there signing their names to a bunch of bogus nonsense? You wonder why Donald Trump wants to get rid of the entire NSC, why he wants to get rid of CISA, why he wants to get rid of all of these deep state apparatuses. It's because they're all in the tank for the other team to the point where they're willing to sign something saying that laptop wasn't real and it's not under investigation when it absolutely was. I'll never get over that one, guys. It's just unbelievable to me. Absolutely, positively disgusting the way they carried on. And you know what? They're going to be held accountable for it. I want to go to the markets. We've got a little bit of a mixed market right now. You get the Dow falling, dollar weakening a little bit right now over some concerns about U.S.-China tensions. NASDAQ actually trading flat a little bit to the upside at this moment in time. You know, my financial research company, just to clarify, we don't actually invest your money. I believe you need to hold on to everything, right? But we can provide you with some guidance in terms of what we think the opportunities are right now. I started this with my buddy, Rob Horton. We have another note coming out today, actually on Bitcoin. And Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of the largest bank in America, that would be JP Morgan Chase, he was on Maria Bartiromo, my former colleague's show this morning. He said something kind of interesting. I think that Bitcoin represents something scary for the Jamie Dimons of the world because Bitcoin actually might actually be the technology and the blockchain on which a lot of things are traded in the future. And so this is one of the reasons why, and I'm not going to completely wonk out on you, but you can go to 76research.com and read more about it because they're all totally wonk out on you. And I'm going to wonk out on you today or tomorrow because we got a big piece coming on this. But the point is that the Bitcoin is the blockchain infrastructure from which I think a lot of things will soon get built. And it's why you have this move into stable coins and the sort of rise of the Bitcoin treasury right now. And so people are stockpiling these Bitcoins. And Jamie Dimon came out swinging against it. It does represent a threat to the sort of traditional financial institutions for sure. And so here's what he had to say. I thought that was interesting. And he's not entirely wrong, but I think that you can stockpile all these things together. Watch.
Well, you said something that struck me earlier. We should be stockpiling. What did you say?
I said not Bitcoins, but bullets, tanks, missiles. Because you pointed out national security is a critical thing. So the most important thing to me in trade is going to be protecting our own national security. And that's around resilient supply chains for medical ingredients, for anything that goes into our F-35s, rare earths, and related. Think of, 2 nanocentimeter AI chips, things like that. We say, yeah, this is important for American national security. We need resilient supply chains. And then we have to do things to help the military, which is we don't keep productive capability empty. So all of us do that in our businesses, but, their missile capability, they have, I forgot the number, they have a plant building missiles, but if you have the double, triple production, we don't have a plant sitting there ready to go. And we need that.
Right.
And that should have been part of our planning. We don't allow enough flexibility for military.
Okay, so again, he's not wrong in that you do want to make sure you have a really strong military. You know that, right? Like, you want to have that, and hopefully you never need to use it, but you need to have that. You need to have all the technology behind it. I mean, I do disagree on the Bitcoin stuff because I think that's part of the future. I think it's kind of scary for them, but Trump gets it. He knows that it's part of the future as well, which is why he's been very out in front of embracing this technology. Overall, how does the market perform in this environment? Look, I'm a big believer we're going to get through all this, whether it be the China tariffs, whether it be the EU tariffs, etc. Donald Trump's going to find a way through these negotiations. We have a tremendous Treasury of the Secretary, and I think you're going to find on the other side of things, the market's going to be up quite a bit in 4 years. It's sort of the invest in MAGA trade. Investinmaga.com. It's another 76 Research handle that we have. But go look at 76 Research. Use code $1 so you can subscribe for $1 a month for the first 2 months. Here's Donald Trump bragging about how the stocks are going to go up, up, and away.
Amazing what a rising market will do. Oh, it's going to get a lot higher. In fact, I told people 5 weeks ago, this is a great time to buy. I got criticized for that. Now they don't criticize me anymore. People should have listened. But it's going to go a lot higher.
A lot higher. Okay, so what do you buy? You know, these are some of the stocks in our portfolios at 76research.com. I encourage you, again, to go check it. So over on this show called The View, which is just the most awful, most awkward, most terrible program perhaps on television. I mean, Joy Reid's might have been the worst. So this is now the worst. Like if it was second place, they've just moved up to first because Joy Reid was fired from MSNBC or unceremoniously let go or contract not renewed. I don't know how you want to say it, but The View had this episode this week and it got really, really awkward, like really awkward. And it's in part because of the guests that they brought on. His name is Anthony Weiner. Remember that was, Alex Soros, the kid. He married Huma Abedin. Huma Abedin was the spouse of Anthony Weiner. I mean, just crazy, mind-boggling scandal there, right? Like, it's still early in the day. We don't need to get into the court details. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, they went there at like 11 a.m. or whenever this show is on The View, and it's uncomfortable. And I think that at some point, this is really truly soon going to haunt them because I'm hearing internal rumblings that Disney is really tired of ABC overall, desperate to get rid of the place, and no wonder.
You've had numerous of them. You resigned from Congress in 2011 over a sexting scandal. 2 years later, you stepped down from the mayoral race after sexting again under the alias Carlos Danger. And then in 2016, you sent lewd texts to a minor and served 15 months in prison, in addition to becoming a registered sex offender. Right. So with all that said, why do you think, or why should New Yorkers give you a chance at a political comeback?
Well, let me just say this. I mean, all of that happened, and I accept responsibility for it. You won't hear me do what some other people in public life have done, Donald Trump or Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams. I'm a victim. They persecuted me for no reason. I was dealing with very serious problems. I was dealing with what I now understand to be addiction. I lost my brother Seth to addiction. And I accepted. I didn't ask for a trial. I pled guilty, served my time in prison, served in a halfway house, served probation, went to try to do good work for the formerly incarcerated. And I guess what I'm saying to people is, maybe don't vote for me in spite of what they know about me, but maybe consider that journey, that idea that we all go through things and we come out the other side. And also, what does it mean? You know, I'm Jewish, but they have this notion in Catholicism around you suffer for a reason so you can be of service at the other end. So I'm not asking people, I'm doing the opposite of what a lot of politicians do when they're in my position. Ignore that problem, pretend it didn't happen, blame someone else. I am saying, yes, I did these things. I got into recovery. I try to make my life better. And now if I can be of service, and I'm a damn good politician. I come up with answers. Yep. I talk to people directly.
You are.
I don't try to butter over things. I try to be direct. Then why shouldn't I? And if it's just because I have bad things in my past, that's not a good enough reason. I mean, look, all I can ever be is who I am right now. Yeah. And that brought me to this space.
Congressman, so there's a growing sense of just general distrust in elected officials. Take the New York Democratic mayoral race alone. You have Eric Adams, his corruption charges, which were then dropped by the Trump DOJ. Former Governor Cuomo resigning over sexual harassment allegations. Scott Stringer has also been accused of sexual harassment. Now, they all deny these allegations. Do you understand why so many Americans just feel so disillusioned with politics?
Yeah, I mean, and Donald Trump is a 34 times felon. And look, I think,
right.
We'll pick that up on the other side. I have something to say. I mean, this guy's unbelievable, just unbelievable. He's thinking, oh, well, you know, Donald Trump, if they went after him. Like, I don't think Donald Trump got caught doing the kinds of stuff that you were doing, Weiner, baby.
You can draw two conclusions. One is people don't care. I don't believe that. I think people do care. But I do think there is some success to this idea of trying to convince enough people that you've somehow been persecuted. And I think what politicians sometimes don't realize is voters don't expect you to be some kind of paradigm of greatness. They want you to be an honest, authentic, full person, okay? And I don't think that voters are like, I like Donald Trump because he was a felon. They're just prepared to overlook it for whatever reason. I think if Donald Trump or Cuomo or Adams would say, you know what? I messed up. I made a mistake. I had whatever motivation. I pursued this in the wrong way. And from that, I am here. If they would say that, I think voters would embrace them. I don't think it is a way, Anna knows this, you know this. We are very often told by consultants, never say the word I'm sorry. Yeah. Because it becomes an ad and it becomes, no, I think that in all of our lives, we've had moments where like, I think I should go say I'm sorry. And so that's what I think politicians should do more often.
Well, you call.
Do you guys think that worked? Do you actually believe or buy any of that? Or do you think that The View is now putting itself again in jeopardy? In terms of Anthony Weiner, like I still can't get beyond the name. Have I told you the story? So I was an anchor on CNBC, and he came on my program like days before this all went down. So this was quite a few years ago. And I actually speak a little bit of German. And so in German, you would say Weiner. And I get into this fight with my producer. I'm like, that's not, nobody really knew of him that back then. I'm like, that's not how you say his name. It's Weiner. There's no way it's Anthony Weiner, okay? Like, trust me, I'm not saying Weiner on the air. Like, it's Anthony Weiner. And he's like, no, Trish, it's Weiner. So we're having this going back and forth. And finally, like I think he got on, and I spoke to one of the press people or something. I'm like, can you tell me how to pronounce his name? And they said, Weiner. And I'm like, man, like that guy's dealing with some baggage. And he probably has been for a long time. I'm like, I know I'm acting like a little boy in 5th grade, but come on, like that's what I'm changing my name to, Weiner or Weiner or something. I mean, it's something better than Weiner. Anyway, back to The View for a moment. So it's been holding up okay in the ratings, but they've been realizing in this transition at Disney that they're going through in terms of, what the reality of the media landscape is that is a very, very expensive show. It's an expensive show to produce. You got Whoopi's salary and Joy's salary, all these people, right? You're dealing with massive egos, which I'm sure is a pain in the neck and a problem, because how many women are on that set? Like 5 of them, and they're coming in and out. And I guarantee you and I know people that have worked on the show, so I actually have a lot of inside knowledge on this, and Meghan McCain was on there and Abby was on there. I mean, miserable place. Like, you could not pay me enough, right, to ever go on a show like that, because it's just going to be miserable. Even if you were all in agreement on things, you get 5 women, all of whom have sharp elbows, trying to basically be the center of attention. So it's a headache from that standpoint. It's a headache from the financial standpoint of, 1, the big salaries that they're paying, and 2, the production staff, because what goes into producing a show like that with the live studio audience and the person holding up the applaud now sign, etc., is massive. So financially speaking, it's actually quite cumbersome. And so then you have to start to say, wait a second, there's also this shift going on in news. look at what we're seeing, what we're dealing with. You guys are here, right? You're here for a reason, because there's a transparency, there's an honesty and a truth here that you're going to get that you can't necessarily get at those big fancy networks with their studio audiences, etc. And so increasingly people are migrating to these platforms. And so for years, Bloomberg had a great article over the weekend on this. For years, places like YouTube were trying to convince advertisers, hey, you know what? If you actually want to reach your specific demo, you got to come over here. And they're like, no. We're going to be over on The View, right? Because it's all sane and pretty and great over on The View. And I think what they're learning is, one, you're not going to find the person you need to find, right? Because the commercials are just a different genre and people change the channel during the commercials. And you don't have the stickiness that you have here on the Trish Regan show. And as a result of all of these things, you're not getting as much bang for your buck. So advertisers have scaled back and they have moved dollars over to platforms like YouTube, where you can actually sort of go after the person you want to go after with greater precision. And that's the future of the media. And the other component of that is just the future of the media being independent and not having to deal with the studio audiences. And I mean, unless we wanted one, right? And it's a very, very different experience, I think, over here. And it's certainly been rewarding for me. And I'm super psyched that we're in the top 100 and all that stuff right now. But again, I get back to whether or not ABC as an entity can continue on with Disney. And Disney knows it has to change this. It's looking at opportunity with ESPN. People will pay for sports, okay? They'll pay for sports because, I know you guys, you need your sports, right? You need to watch these athletic games. So that's a model that will actually work in terms of a subscription service. But are they going to pay for The View? I'll ask you. Let me look at your comments. Like, are they going to pay for The View? Are you going to pay to have that show in your house? I don't think so. So this is where they're realizing, if you would, this is where, and thank you, Psychological Protectionist, for your generosity. This is where they're now realizing that they can't make a go of it with these old-fashioned news organizations and the bad programs that they keep on spitting out. And so, look, Comcast realized this the hard way, guys. Comcast realized that it can't work with the MSNBCs or, frankly, the cable networks anymore, and that it's more valuable for them to spin these things off than for them to continue forward, because they don't know what to do with this. It used to be, right, that all the cable content, all the cable companies wanted to own the content because content's king. And if you're cable and you're, controlling the distribution, and you've got the content, then that's win-win-win all day long. But reality has crept up with them. And so suddenly the distribution is kind of wherever you want it, right? Whether it's here on YouTube, whether it is over on Rumble, or, all these different social media, it could be on my own website, etc. You have all these different ways of communicating with people. So consequently, it's no longer the distribution, it's entirely 1,000% the content. And then you're looking at content, like, let me show you this one, that's struggling. So in the case of MSNBC, they've got content that's not rating. They've got content that's expensive, that is not succeeding. Jen Psaki has plummeted the ratings at that primetime show that she took over for Rachel Maddow down into the depths of levels they've never seen before, okay? So they're really struggling, and yet they're paying these people all these money. I mean, what is Rachel allegedly getting? $25 million a year. They cut her by $5 million. And they got her doing one show a week. I mean, you understand, like, something's kind of messed up in that algorithm and in that equation. And they can't afford them anymore. So Comcast is like, this is a dying business. We need to get rid of it. Oh, and there's a tax incentive for us to do this if we spin enough this way with SpinCo, which they're going to call Versant because they want to sound all fancy schmancy. But what's fascinating, and this is what people are sort of talking about in media circles, is that when they came out with their big upfronts recently, they didn't put Jen Psaki up there. I mean, I certainly didn't see her in any of the headlines. Hollywood Reporter's talking about all these things they're going to have on Sci-Fi and on Oxygen, and they're trying to create all this other content and take that stuff forward in a way that can also have a streaming component. But what happens to the likes of MSNBC? Maybe the answer is you shut it down completely. You just get, who needs it? Who needs a news network in your new cable portfolio of Verdant or Versant or whatever it is? We'll have to get that because we'll know the ticker symbol soon when it comes out. But do you even need it? Maybe you could just shut the whole thing down. I mean, they're getting rid of people left and right. They fired all of Rachel Maddow's staff, except for maybe one producer, and they're trying to trade her out for the cheaper version of Peppermint Patty, but Peppermint Patty can't get any numbers either. So again, what is your future? What is your opportunity? I mean, I think, and I've said this before, you get two choices. You're either going to, one, completely slim down, and you're going to have a really, really tight ship, and you're going to still print money because you know what? People will still advertise over there. Strangely enough. And so you print money, but you do so knowing that there's going to be a wind down process, which means maybe you can't afford the Morning Joe salaries anymore. Maybe you can't afford the $25 million for Rachel Maddow anymore. So Rachel Maddow could find herself very much out at the end of this contract, and she'll be fine. She'll probably go off into podcast land, and there'll be a following of libs that love her there. But does she continue on at MSNBC? MSNBC, if it can't get the numbers, ultimately can't survive as a business. So its choice is you reduce your costs significantly and you stay along there and you hope for a sea change at some point, or you just shutter the thing altogether. You take it as a write-off and you move forward. I mean, that's kind of my advice for these guys. Go to 76research.com, type in code word dollar, and get our research there. We do have 3 portfolios that you can also sign up for, and you would see them at 76research.com. You can subscribe to the portfolios, and then you get all the research and the information on the companies that we value most there in our different portfolios, about 10 to 15 stocks in each and every one of those. So I encourage you for sure to take a look at this, especially at a time like this when I think there's going to be a lot of future upside coming. I mean that in these markets. I like what this administration is doing. I mean, hey, it could be bumpy along the way. I'm not saying anything's perfect, but it's all coming together. Reminder, if you haven't subscribed, do me that favor. Make sure that you subscribe to the show, the Trish Regan Show, because, you know, we're small but mighty and we're growing every single day. And well, Don's going to get after if you do not actually subscribe. So before you hear his wrath, he's in the chat all the time telling you guys to like and subscribe. So please do that. And I will see you back here. Justin, thank you so much. Again, appreciate all the generosity from you guys. Great. Yeah, I have seen that Biden clip. Justin, and you know what? I've actually played it a lot. I've seen that and I've played it. You know, maybe we'll have to bring back that little goodie. It's weird, right? Like, there's a lot of weird Biden clips, shall we say. He's definitely out of it, in my opinion, and I think heads are going to roll, and they should. Like, you cannot have a situation where people are refusing to put forward the 25th Amendment. We have a 25th Amendment for a reason. You can't just ignore that because you want to stay in power. That's what went down. And it's all going to come out. And we're going to be here on the front lines of history with you every single day live on the Trish Regan Show. So please subscribe, join me, make a comment, and we'll see you tomorrow.